Take a breath with me. So we're continuing with our annual theme, Timeless Wisdom, Evolutionary Vision. And we'll be hearing this every Sunday throughout the year to really anchor it in our experience. We believe in the unity of all life, and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. This is a universe of wholeness, allness, oneness. Spirit is a transcendent, perfect wholeness that in its infinite inclusivity harmoniously embraces all seeming opposites. Evolutionary vision. We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life. A world where this kinship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of the spiritual wisdom and experience. We see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with spirit and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. What a beautiful thing to focus on for the entire year and perhaps our entire life. So our monthly theme is One Journey, Many Paths. And today's particular title is One Mind, Infinite Connection, in alignment with our Centers for Spiritual Living annual convention that just completed online. And what an amazing time that was. I will just share briefly that it truly offered everyone who was open to it an experience of infinite connection beyond physical boundaries. This year was our virtual convention, and we literally connected with people from all over the globe. And it's simply a matter of removing the mental barrier that we've created against using technology to allow us to truly feel and experience being deeply connected with people that are thousands of miles physically removed from us. It was amazing. And so this week, looking at One Mind, Infinite Connection, we're encouraged to move from the thinking part of oneness to the experience of oneness. One of the moments that really captured me during Vista was when I got to hear our beloved Reverend Lisa Carson, who is from the Chico Paradise area, speaking to us from Chiang Mai, Thailand, where she is now unfolding her ministry in Thailand. It was just amazing. And so can we begin to really consider oneness from the perspective that it really is one journey, many paths, one mountain, many trails, one river, many streams and many currents, one tree, many branches, one source, many expressions of that source in physical form. Because that's what's available to us, to move from knowing it and knowing about it to that experiential feeling level where we have embodied it. The context for today's talk, one might imagine, in order to experience that feeling of oneness, that experience of oneness, that we have to know deeply and embody that there is one substance, and that one substance is individualized in a multiplicity of form that, fair enough, seems separate in this physical realm, and yet allowing ourselves to embody that there is no separation. That when I'm looking at you, I'm looking at me. Because we're each the I am in form. Our global heart vision for Centers for Spiritual Living offers us a global perspective. Here at Sierra Center for Spiritual Living, we're a radically inclusive, spiritually progressive community that celebrates the very diversity of creation. And what that really means is that we dare to recognize and celebrate that every individualized expression of the one is on purpose. And so automatically it's included, and we make a conscious choice and an intentional practice of including every expression, which is a radical notion here on planet Earth. Ernest Holmes says this: within this infinite mind, each individual exists. We are not separated from life, neither is it separated from us. But we are separate entities within it, individualized centers of God consciousness. Now, consciousness is that substance. And we have to be clear about how we're using this word consciousness, because the medical profession uses it about whether or not you're conscious, as in unconscious or conscious. Psychology uses it as the different levels of psychological functioning. We often use it as different levels of awareness. In this context, I'm using it as consciousness, capital C, the substance out of which all is created. And being created out of it, we know that everything must contain that consciousness. Yes? Okay. So we absolutely must find and participate in spiritual practices that resonate with us, that open us to a greater understanding, a greater experience, a greater expansion of that consciousness within us. Here at Centers for Spiritual Living, here at Sierra Center for Spiritual Living, just like the entire organization, we really teach and encourage the practice of the 5 pillars. Okay? The first being meditation. Meditation being seeking that guidance from within, that sacred listening. And there are as many ways to meditate as there are people on the planet. If you don't have a regular meditation practice, I invite you to join us each morning, at least Monday through Saturday. And in the Sunday service, we have a meditation as well. and begin to just play with it and practice. See where it takes you. And then there is affirmative prayer, which we take those things that come to us in that divine listening and speak them into realization. And when I use the word realization, I am speaking about making it real in this physical realm, to realize it. And we do that by recognizing what the infinite is, that we are infinitely connected with it. We speak the desires of our heart into realization, and we speak those in the now, because we're recognizing that it's already present even before we see it in the physical realm. And that practice takes us to gratitude, and we express our gratitude. And then we know that the law of life unfolding, the law of manifestation, has it handled, and that it's not anything that we do in this human realm, but rather the law informs our actions in the human realm. So we let go. And that's our form of affirmative prayer. Spiritual study is the third pillar, and it's significant because being a new thought philosophy, a new thought faith, a new thought way of life, we have to create a pathway to having some new thoughts. And one of the best pathways that I can offer you is teaching, is study, spiritual study. And again, many paths to get there. I invite you to take a look at the spiritual economics class. I think you'll find that it's more than you imagined it might be. I want to read you just a little snippet from the book that we'll be using, Eric Butterworth's Spiritual Economics. Life's innermost secret is the divine pattern in you, which you can only really know when you are giving yourself in service. You can work for money and prestige and climb the pinnacle of success and still not know yourself, thus seeking other avenues of escape, such as alcohol and various kinds of addiction. All this is because your work does not satisfy you. And the reason it doesn't satisfy you is that you are not satisfied with or fulfilled in yourself. So if you think this class is all about how to make money, it's not. But what it is about is this glorious, deep experience and learning of the truth of you and how to listen deeply, how to use these other pillars. And he speaks of service. And service is literally oneness in action. It is giving of that inner self through the physical self, which is very much part of the activity of our fifth pillar, circulation. And notice it's called circulation. We often misinterpret it as giving, but giving is only one part of the circulation, because we inhale and we exhale. The very blood in our bodies goes down one side, okay, leaves left, returns right. Everything in nature is based in circulation. It rains, it evaporates, it rains, it evaporates. Things grow, they fall down, they decompose, feed the soil, sprout new growth. Circulation is the very nature of creation. We come here in form, and at some time in our journey, we return to the formless, right back from what we came out of. Everything is circulation. And so part of this class of spiritual economics is understanding the cycle of circulation and really becoming clear about where am I currently fitting into it and what is available to me to fit into it and more deeply participate in that circulation. We practice inclusion. And part of the big thing of inclusion is we have to show up. Here in our own lives, we have to show up. Here at Sierra Center for Spiritual Living, we have to show up. We have to show up in our communities. We have to show up in our state. We have to show up in our world. And here's the trick. To really be inclusive and to practice inclusivity, we have to show up without attachment. We have to be willing to be vulnerable, to share those divine ideas that are making themselves known as we engage in those 5 spiritual practices without attachment, because we're living in the experience of oneness that understands every experience is essential to the whole. And so we have to let go of having things our way, which means we have to let go of criticizing and pointing fingers at others who we have decided are doing it wrong. Let me say that again. That means we have to give up criticizing and pointing fingers at those we've decided are doing it wrong and really make room. Because a big part of inclusion is we have to stop being right, because in order to be right, we've had to make someone else wrong. And that is the activity of exclusion. And so I invite you to consider Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And he continues. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And so my call to action to you this week is to really get real with yourself. To ask yourself, how do I understand and practice love thy neighbor as thyself? Am I understanding that the first part of that is love thyself? And that requires us to know thyself. The God self, the spiritual self, the innermost being self. Because as we know that self, we know oneness, and everyone becomes our neighbor. It gets really simple. The second thing that I invite you to do this week is to really take a deep look at, am I practicing forgiveness to liberate myself and others from the dis-ease of resentment? Forgiveness has nothing to do with the person who wronged you. And we have all been harmed in this human realm, mentally, emotionally, some of us physically. Forgiveness is the practice of liberating you from being chained to the past. Now that's a whole nother talk. That's a whole class. And as we practice forgiveness, we emancipate ourselves, we liberate ourselves, and as we know freedom, we more deeply participate in oneness. And finally, what values? We've gotten 11 folks have responded to the values process that we're doing. I'm going to leave it up for one more week till the end of February, and then we'll continue the process by whittling it down some more. But what values are required to create and participate in a beloved community? Not just at the Sierra Center level, but certainly there, but the greater beloved community, the beloved community of all creation. What values, when you ask that question and listen deeply, what comes alive in you? So I invite you to play with these 3 questions this week, to consider those 5 pillars of spiritual practice. If there's something I can do to assist you, to empower you in improving, to up-leveling your practice in any of those areas, I am here. Reach out. I cannot, will not even try to read your mind, but I am here when you reach out. Let's take this into prayer. And so knowing that there is one infinite, ever-present allness, knowing that it is everywhere present, knowing that it has always existed, having no beginning, it can have no end, it is eternal. Knowing that it is infinite, it has no edges, so its very center must be everywhere present. And knowing that it is the singular substance out of which all is created, and that its only desire is to express. I know that I am created out of it, by it, to express it in form. And so I speak my word, knowing that what is true of me is true of all, and that the word I speak is the word of the I am. Claiming, affirming, accepting as true that life is unfolding perfectly. That I am one with all beings. One infinite multiplicity. So I commit myself again this morning to being a place where God shows up. To being the activity of God, experiencing God from an awareness level, from an intentional level. Knowing that as I do, anything unlike that rises to my awareness to be neutralized and transformed. And that as I transform what is in my thought processes, I transform what is operating in the collective mind. One mind, one wholeness, one perfection. And so I celebrate. I celebrate the truth that the divine law unfolding, God as God, the soul of creation, is unfolding everything perfectly. And that I get to say yes. That I compel nothing and Spirit compels me. Yes. And so in my yes, I release, I let go. And I simply step into this divine yes of being more than my human brain imagines me to be. I invite you to anchor these words with me as we say together. Amen. Amen. Aho. Shalom. Ashe. And so it is.